In a world where self-development, discipline, and spiritual awakening are revered goals, many individuals seek guidance from those who appear to possess a deeper understanding of life and purpose. These individuals often become mentors, gurus, or spiritual teachers. Their words carry weight, their presence commands respect, and their teachings are absorbed by followers hungry for truth. Yet, not all guidance is created equal. Not all words that sound wise are born from wisdom. Sometimes, behind a facade of enlightenment lies a darkness hidden in subtle speech, cloaked in philosophy, or disguised as truth. In these cases, a single phrase, a seemingly minor statement, can serve as a red flag, a loud siren in the calm waters of admiration. When someone who is positioned as a spiritual guide says something that feels dismissive, controlling, or fundamentally dehumanizing, it demands more than just a raised eyebrow, it demands distance. This is where our speech begins, at the moment of realization, when the person you once respected crosses a boundary that cannot be uncrossed. This speech is not about the fall of an individual, but the rise of self-awareness. It's a warning and a guide. It's a call to attention for anyone who has ever found themselves entranced by charisma, misled by mystique, or trapped in the illusion of wisdom. If he tells you that your suffering is your fault, that your trauma is weakness, leave him immediately. This, right here, is the most engaging and powerful truth of the speech, because in that moment the illusion shatters. Any teacher who diminishes your pain or suggests that your wounds disqualify you from growth is not a guide, he is a gatekeeper of harm. And finally, we'll arrive at the conclusion, a long-form reflection on reclaiming your autonomy, trusting your instincts, and learning how leaving can sometimes be the most sacred act of self-respect. Leaving someone you once respected is not easy. It often comes with guilt, confusion, and a haunting echo of doubt. You may find yourself revisiting their words, wondering if perhaps you misunderstood. You may feel as though you're betraying not just a teacher, but a part of yourself that believed in them. That's natural, that's human, but it's also part of the healing. When a so-called spiritual leader invalidates your pain or speaks with superiority disguised as compassion, it's not enlightenment, it's emotional abandonment. True wisdom doesn't shame. True teachers do not elevate themselves by belittling others. They don't turn your trauma into evidence of your inferiority. They don't use your suffering as a tool to establish dominance. They listen, they honor, they walk with you through the fire, not stand over you throwing metaphysical scripture like stones. So when he says you are weak because you feel, when he says your pain is illusion, when he says you are the problem, leave him immediately. Your spirit is not up for debate. Your growth does not require the erasure of your humanity. Any teaching that demands you disconnect from yourself is not awakening, its indoctrination. If you are told to sever your emotions in order to rise, you will fall deeper into a hollow version of who you were meant to become. Leaving is not a failure, it is a graduation. It is the moment when you choose truth over tradition, self-worth over subservience. Walking away from a toxic teacher does not make you lost, it means you've found the path again. And let us be clear, silence is not peace, and stoicism is not strength when it comes at the cost of your inner voice. Spiritual growth should not come with spiritual abuse. And if the path to so-called enlightenment requires that you become less of yourself, then it's not your path. There is no shame in trusting your instincts. The whisper inside that tells you, this isn't right, is the most sacred voice of all. Honor it, follow it, protect it, because that voice, your own voice, is the real master. That is the true guide. So when he says the thing that makes your soul recoil, when he frames your scars as failures, when he weaponizes your vulnerability against you, do not explain, do not debate, do not wait, leave him immediately, and in that departure, you will have already begun your greatest journey yet back to yourself. There is a certain kind of power that comes not from strength, but from stillness. The calm presence of a teacher who seems to have transcended the chaos of the world can be intoxicating. We are naturally drawn to those who appear to know more, who speak in riddles and metaphors, whose words wrap around pain like silk, making it seem softer, almost poetic. This is how the mask begins. False wisdom does not arrive screaming. It does not wear horns or wave red flags. It comes cloaked in peace, in composure, in language that sounds ancient and sacred. It promises clarity, but often delivers confusion. It offers discipline, but sometimes breeds obedience. And when that mask is worn by someone whose words penetrate deeply into your psyche, you may not even realize that you're being led, not toward freedom, but away from yourself. False wisdom often mirrors true wisdom in structure, but not in spirit. It imitates the cadence of truth without carrying its compassion. You hear the same themes repeated over and over. Let go of ego, detach from emotions, accept your suffering. On the surface, these teachings seem helpful. In the right context, they can indeed be pathways to peace. But when they are offered by someone who uses them not to uplift, but to control or dismiss, they become tools of manipulation. They become weapons dressed in white robes. The danger lies in how easy it is to mistake composure for consciousness. When someone speaks calmly, with precise words and an unwavering voice, it's easy to assume they are wise. When they speak of detachment, you may believe they have mastered themselves. But not all stillness is sacred. Some is simply rehearsed. Some is the result of suppression, not elevation. And some is used as a shield to avoid accountability or empathy. A false teacher, hidden behind the mask of spiritual authority, will rarely raise his voice. He doesn't have to. His power comes from ambiguity. He may answer a question with another question, designed not to lead you inward, but to destabilize your certainty. If you express doubt, he may tell you to examine your ego. If you express emotion, he may suggest you are not evolved enough to handle truth. In doing so, he flips the dynamic. Your confusion becomes your flaw, your pain becomes your fault, and his detachment becomes the ideal you are told to strive for. Over time, you begin to lose faith in your own instincts. You second-guess your reactions. You wonder why others seem moved by his presence, while you feel unseen, invalidated, or subtly diminished. But you say nothing, because you don't want to be the unenlightened one. You don't want to seem like you don't get it, and that's exactly how the mask works. It doesn't need to shout. It just needs you to stay silent. One of the most insidious aspects of false wisdom is how it turns natural human experiences, grief, anger, vulnerability, into signs of weakness or spiritual immaturity. If you cry, you are told to become still. If you protest, you are told to accept. If you question, you are told you are not yet ready, and yet, behind that mask, the person saying these things may have never fully confronted their own pain. They may have bypassed their own humanity in favor of a rigid persona. They may be using the idea of enlightenment as a way to escape intimacy, responsibility, or genuine connection. This is not to say that all spiritual teachings are invalid or that discipline and emotional regulation are wrong. Not at all. The problem arises when these concepts are used not to support your growth, but to enforce a hierarchy where the teacher remains above and the student remains dependent. In such dynamics, the mask becomes a mirror. You are invited to see yourself only through their lens. And the moment you start to reclaim your own perspective, you become resistant, attached, or unready. That's the telltale sign. When growth becomes conditional on obedience, when truth becomes monopolized, and when discomfort is consistently blamed on you rather than being honored as part of the process, you are no longer in the presence of wisdom. You are in the presence of control. And it's not just about you. These individuals often build communities or followings where this mask becomes institutionalized. People within the group begin to repeat the same phrases, enforce the same rules, and perpetuate the same patterns. Questioning the teacher becomes taboo. Leaving the group is seen as regression. Emotional honesty is treated as failure, and thus the mask is protected, not just by the one who wears it, but by those who have been taught to fear what lies behind it. To be clear, false wisdom is not always malicious. Some who wear the mask genuinely believe they are helping. They may be victims of their own teachers, or products of a system that prizes stoicism over sensitivity. But intention does not erase impact. If someone's words consistently leave you feeling smaller, more confused, or ashamed of your natural responses, it doesn't matter whether they meant harm or not. The result is the same: disconnection from yourself. This is why awareness is crucial, not paranoia, not cynicism, but discernment. Listen closely to how a teacher responds to your vulnerability. Watch how they handle contradiction. Do they create space for your experience, or do they redirect it? Do they acknowledge their own limitations, or do they hide behind vague ideals? Do they speak to your soul, or do they subtly silence it in the name of growth? It's easy to feel guilty when you start to question someone you once admired. But remember this: true wisdom does not fear scrutiny. It welcomes it, it evolves, it holds space for doubt and change. It meets you where you are, not where it wants you to be. The moment someone positions themselves as above questioning, beyond feeling, or immune to criticism, they have stopped teaching and started performing, and that performance may be beautiful, it may be compelling. It may even change your life for a while. But when the mask of false wisdom begins to crack, when you hear that one sentence that stings instead of heals, that shames instead of uplifts, that tells you your pain is proof of your fail, you listen to that feeling. Trust it. That is your soul reminding you that truth does not require your silence. No teacher, no matter how calm or commanding, is above your inner knowing. And sometimes the wisest thing you can do is walk away. Not in anger, not in rebellion, but in quiet clarity. You saw the mask. You heard what was said, and you chose not to ignore it. That choice is your liberation. There is a unique kind of betrayal that happens when someone you trust with your soul begins to dismantle your emotional reality in the name of helping you grow. It doesn't begin with overt rejection or loud condemnation. It starts with soft words, smooth, polished, deceptively kind. You bring your hurt, your confusion, your humanity to them like an offering, and they respond not with acknowledgement but with a veiled dismissal. Not with validation, but with elegant invalidation. That is emotional gaslighting dressed in spiritual robes. You might not notice it at first. It rarely appears as cruelty. In fact, it often feels like care. You are told that your emotions are illusions, your pain is ego, your grief is attachment, your anger is immaturity. It's wrapped in philosophies that sound timeless and deep, borrowed from ancient texts or sacred traditions. But the impact is not healing, it's hollowing. You begin to question not only your feelings but the very fact that you are feeling, and in doing so, you lose the most primal form of wisdom you possess, your emotional truth. Emotional gaslighting in spiritual contexts is insidious because it hides behind language that suggests clarity. It makes you feel as though your suffering is not real, or worse, that it is a choice. You start to believe that if you were more enlightened, you wouldn't be hurting. If you were stronger, you wouldn't need to express. If you were evolved, you would remain untouched by emotion, and so you begin to suppress. You nod, you meditate harder, you smile when you're breaking inside, because you're trying to become what you think you're supposed to be: stoic, detached, transcendent. But what you're really doing is abandoning yourself. And you're doing it with someone else's encouragement, someone who claims to be leading you to freedom. This is the dark side of spiritual rhetoric. It can be used to mask emotional neglect. When someone teaches you to bypass your emotional landscape, they are not guiding you. They are erasing you. They are teaching you that parts of yourself are not welcome in the presence of so-called wisdom. This kind of gaslighting is especially dangerous because it is often internalized. Over time, you no longer need the teacher to correct you. You begin correcting yourself. You feel sadness, and you shame yourself for not being peaceful. You feel anger, and you rush to neutralize it with spiritual platitudes. You feel fear, and you convince yourself it's just a lower vibration. Slowly, you stop listening to your body, you stop trusting your gut, you mistake repression for enlightenment, and you confuse numbness with wisdom. The people who perpetuate this often believe they are helping. They talk about ego death, the illusion of the self, the importance of stillness. But there is a difference between using these concepts as tools for growth and wielding them as weapons to deny emotion. A true teacher does not tell you to ignore your suffering. They teach you how to walk through it with grace. They do not shame your feelings. They help you understand them. They do not silence your pain. They help you translate it. But the gaslighter, the one who uses spiritual language to avoid emotional responsibility, does none of this. Instead, they create a hierarchy. Emotions are at the bottom, reason is above that, and at the top sits detachment. They act as though emotion is something to outgrow rather than integrate, and so they encourage you to split, to dissociate, to ascend away from your human experience, rather than descend into it with presence and love. What's most tragic is that this kind of gaslighting often happens when you are most vulnerable. You come with your trauma, your questions, your open heart. You ask for guidance, and instead of being met with care, you are met with subtle condemnation disguised as spiritual advice. Why are you still attached? They may ask. Why do you identify with your story? You need to transcend this. These statements do not help you grow. They make you feel broken for being human. They make you feel defective for needing comfort. And worst of all, they make you distrust yourself, and so you go silent. You stop sharing. You start pretending to be okay. You try to embody the version of yourself they keep talking about, the one who has risen above all suffering, the one who doesn't flinch, the one who is always at peace. But inside, you're unraveling, because the truth is, no one rises by denial. No one heals by pretending not to hurt, and no one becomes whole by splitting off the parts of themselves that feel the most. The gaslighting becomes a cycle. Every time you express something real, it is met with deflection or dismissal. If you're sad, you're told to let go. If you're scared, you're told to trust the universe. If you're angry, you're told that's your ego flaring up. These responses do not help. They invalidate. And over time, you become fluent in spiritual gaslighting yourself. You start to label your feelings as wrong. You berate yourself for not being evolved enough. You tell yourself that your pain is a sign of failure, and that if you were truly awakened, you wouldn't feel so much. But awakening is not the absence of feeling. It's the full embrace of it. It is not detachment from pain, but the ability to sit with it, learn from it, and still remain present. Emotional intelligence is not a weakness to be transcended. It is a compass, guiding you toward truth. Your feelings are not the enemy. They are data. They are echoes of your inner world asking to be heard, not silenced. And any teacher who cannot make room for your emotional truth is not teaching. They are performing. The moment you begin to feel like your emotions are spiritual failures is the moment you need to pause and reflect on the messages you've been receiving. What is being sold to you as transcendence might actually be disconnection. What is being praised as detachment might be avoidance. And what is being upheld as spiritual maturity might be emotional suppression in disguise. You were never meant to erase yourself to become enlightened. Your joy, your rage, your sorrow, they are not mistakes. They are not evidence that you are broken. They are proof that you are alive, that you care, that you feel deeply, and those are not things to hide. They are things to honor. If someone makes you feel small for feeling, if they use spiritual terms to confuse, dismiss, or belittle your emotional reality, if they consistently respond to your pain with detachment instead of compassion, leave. Not because you're angry, not because you're weak, but because your soul knows the difference between growth and gaslighting. Emotional gaslighting, especially when cloaked in spiritual authority, is a slow erosion of self-trust. It convinces you to question your inner truth, your instincts, your emotional responses. But you deserve more than that. You deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be felt. So let this be a return to your own voice. Let this be the moment you stop explaining your emotions away. Let this be the start of honoring your inner world as sacred, not shameful, and if anyone, no matter how wise they seem, ever makes you feel less for feeling deeply, leave. Immediately, there comes a moment when silence begins to feel heavier than any truth you could speak aloud. A moment when your body starts sending signals your mind cannot deny. The tightness in your chest during every interaction, the knot in your stomach before each conversation, the way your voice grows smaller in their presence. You begin to realize that staying is costing you something vital, not just your peace, but your dignity, not just your comfort, but your sense of self, and so the most sacred act of self-respect becomes the one you've been taught to fear the most, leaving. Walking away is often framed as weakness. In many spiritual or personal growth communities, there's an unspoken belief that staying is synonymous with strength. That if you just meditate more, reflect harder, dissolve more of your ego, you'll somehow transcend the discomfort and rise to a higher level of understanding. But not all pain is a lesson to be mastered. Some pain is a message that the environment itself is unsafe, that the teacher is not wise but manipulative, that the doctrine is not deep, just dense, and when that realization comes, walking away is not defeat. It is the loudest declaration of inner power you will ever make. There is an immense courage in leaving what once felt like home, especially when that home is built not from physical walls, but from beliefs, shared language, rituals, and emotional bonds. The person or philosophy you are walking away from may not just be a teacher. They may have become a symbol of hope, a mirror for your own aspirations. Letting go of them may feel like betraying a version of yourself, but the real betrayal is staying in something that continues to shrink you. Sometimes the hardest part of walking away is not the fear of what you're leaving behind, but the doubt that creeps in afterward. What if I was wrong? What if I overreacted? What if the fault was mine? That's the residue of emotional gaslighting. That's what happens when you've been conditioned to place someone else's voice above your own. But even through that doubt, there is a deeper knowing, a calm, steady presence within you that says, you did the right thing. It may not shout, it may not soothe you immediately, but it is there, and in time, it becomes the voice you trust again. Leaving is not just a physical act, it is spiritual reclamation. It's the moment you declare that no one, not even someone dressed in spiritual authority, has the right to interpret your worth for you. It's the decision to stop asking for permission to feel what you feel, to stop seeking approval for truths you already know, to stop sitting at the feet of someone who sees your pain as an inconvenience or a flaw. The empowerment of walking away is not just in the act itself, but in what follows. You begin to remember your own voice, you begin to listen to your own body, you begin to reassemble the parts of you that were scattered across someone else's ideology. You no longer need to perform calmness to be accepted. You no longer have to suppress your anger to appear aligned. You no longer pretend your discomfort is just your ego misbehaving. Instead, you honor it, you trust it, you thank it for waking you up. And as you rebuild yourself, you start to understand that real spirituality, or real growth, was never about submission. It was never about climbing some invisible hierarchy of emotional control. It was never about reaching a state where you feel nothing. True growth has always been about returning to the full spectrum of your humanity, learning to be fiercely present with your grief, your joy, your rage, your tenderness, not shrinking from these experiences, but expanding to hold them all. Walking away means choosing that truth over the illusion of peace that comes from conformity. It means letting go of the idea that someone else holds the answers. It means realizing that no amount of poetic language or polished presence can override the intelligence of your own intuition. You learn to stop needing validation for what you feel. You stop looking back for a sign that leaving was the right choice, because in your body you already know it was. There is a strange liberation in no longer needing someone to approve of your departure. You may still hear their voice in your head, still recall their disapproving gaze, still remember the moment they made you question yourself, but those memories no longer hold power. They become part of a story you no longer need to live inside. They become the reason you found your strength, not the reason you lost it. People often talk about forgiveness, but rarely about boundaries, about compassion, but rarely about distance. The truth is, you can walk away and still wish someone well. You can leave with anger, or you can leave with grace, but either way you can leave, and in doing so, you are not abandoning growth. You are embodying it. You are proving to yourself and to the world that the most enlightened thing you can do is protect your peace. There will be times when your decision is misunderstood, when others, still caught in the same illusion you escaped, will call you bitter, arrogant, emotional, or lost. Let them. Their misunderstanding is not your responsibility. Your clarity does not require consensus. You are not obligated to shrink your truth so others can stay comfortable in their delusion. And if you ever find yourself doubting again, remember this: true teachers do not fear your autonomy. True leaders do not punish your questions. True guides do not require your silence to maintain their authority. And if someone did, if someone masked control as discipline, shame as wisdom, or silence as transcendence, then leaving was not just a step forward. It was an act of sacred defiance. There is nothing weak about walking away. In fact, it may be the most powerful choice you ever make. Because it is not just about leaving them. It is about returning to you. The you who feels deeply, the you who asks questions, the you who knows in your bones what freedom feels like. Even when you haven't felt it in a long time, walking away is not running from the truth. It is running back to it. So go without apology, go with tears if they come, go with rage if it burns, go with relief if it rises, but go, and in that going, you will remember who you were before you gave your power away. You will remember who you are, and you will never again forget.